Dubai. A city that looks like it was designed by someone who just discovered the make everything bigger button in a video game. But here's what the glossy tourism videos won't tell you. Those gleaming towers? They weren't built by machines. They were built by men. Thousands of them. Living in conditions that would make a prison look like a resort. And some of them never made it home. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the most ambitious urban experiments in human history. And what we find might change how you see those Instagram photos forever. But first, we need to understand something crucial. Dubai wasn't always like this. In fact, just 50 years ago, it was almost nothing. In 1970, Dubai's population was around 80,000 people. Today, over 3.5 million. That's not growth. That's an explosion. And the man behind this transformation had a vision that seemed absolutely insane at the time. Sheikh Rashid looked at a patch of desert and saw Manhattan. He saw Singapore. He saw a future where oil wouldn't matter anymore, because Dubai would become something else entirely. A global hub, a tax haven, a playground for the ultra-wealthy. But here's the thing about building the impossible. Someone has to actually build it. The construction began in earnest in the late 1990s, and the scale was unlike anything the world had ever seen. We're talking about artificial islands visible from space. We're talking about the world's tallest building. We're talking about indoor ski slopes in one of the hottest places on Earth. The ambition was breathtaking. The execution? That's where things get complicated. See, Dubai didn't have the workforce to build all this. Not even close. So they did what ambitious projects throughout history have always done. They imported labor. From India, from Pakistan, from Bangladesh, from Nepal. Men who were promised good wages and a chance at a better life. What many of them found was something very different. Now, I want to be clear about something before we continue. This isn't about demonizing Dubai or the Emirates. It's about understanding the true cost of rapid development. Because here's the thing, what happened in Dubai isn't unique. It's just more visible. And in a few minutes, I'll show you why this pattern keeps repeating around the world, and why it might be happening right now in a city you've never even heard of. The system that built Dubai has a name. It's called the kafala system. And understanding it is key to understanding everything else. Under kafala, a migrant worker's legal status is tied directly to their employer, their sponsor. This means the employer controls whether the worker can change jobs, whether they can leave the country, in some cases, whether they can leave their housing compound. Now officially, this system has been reformed in recent years. But the legacy of what happened during Dubai's construction boom is written into the very foundations of its towers. Here's how it worked in practice. A young man in rural India or Bangladesh would hear about opportunities in the Gulf. Good money, steady work, a chance to send money home to his family. He would pay a recruitment agent, sometimes borrowing heavily to cover the fees. Thousands of dollars in debt before he even arrived. Then he would land in Dubai, and reality would hit. The job might not be what was promised. The wages might be lower, the hours longer. And that debt? It would hang over everything. Leave the job and you become illegal. Complain too loudly and risk deportation. And deportation means going home in shame, still owing money you can't pay back. The workers were housed in labor camps on the outskirts of the city. Rows of bunk beds, shared bathrooms, sometimes a dozen men to a room. The summer temperatures in Dubai can exceed 45 degrees Celsius. That's 113 Fahrenheit. And for years, there were minimal regulations about when outdoor work had to stop for heat. The exact death toll from Dubai's construction boom is unknown. And I mean truly unknown. Because for years, deaths were often classified as natural causes or cardiac arrest without proper investigation. But researchers and journalists who have dug into this estimate the numbers in the thousands. Thousands of men who left home to build someone else's dream. And the building that symbolizes this more than any other? We're going to talk about it next. Because the Burj Khalifa's construction tells a story that its designers never intended. 828 meters. That's how tall the Burj Khalifa stands. For over a decade, it's been the tallest building in the world, a monument to human ambition and engineering prowess. But let me tell you about how it was built. At the peak of construction, 12,000 workers were on site every single day. 12,000 men working on a structure so tall that the temperature at the top can be 10 degrees cooler than at the base. The concrete had to be specially formulated because normal concrete would have cracked in the desert heat. They could only pour it at night when temperatures dropped. The workers? They were paid roughly $4 to $8 per day, working 6 days a week, 12-hour shifts, living in those camps I mentioned earlier. And when the 2008 financial crisis hit, things got even worse. Construction slowed. Workers were laid off. Some were stranded without money to return home. There are reports of workers going weeks without pay while still being required to work. Now officially, one worker died during the Burj Khalifa's construction. One. But that number is disputed by basically everyone who has looked closely at the project. The real count is almost certainly higher, though exactly how much higher depends on how you count. Do you include the workers who died from heat exhaustion in their dormitories? The ones whose hearts gave out from the strain? The suicides? Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. The psychological toll. Imagine spending years away from your family, living in cramped conditions, working dangerous jobs at extreme heights, earning a fraction of what you were promised, with no realistic way out. Depression and suicide rates among migrant workers in the Gulf states have been documented as significantly elevated. These are invisible casualties, deaths that don't show up in construction accident statistics. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Because Dubai isn't the only place where this pattern exists. In fact, right now, there's another massive construction project happening that makes Dubai look almost modest by comparison. And the conditions for workers? In some ways, they're even more concerning. I'll tell you about it in a moment. But first, we need to understand why this keeps happening, why these patterns repeat. And it comes down to a design philosophy that prioritizes spectacle over everything else. There's a term in urban design called starchitecture. It refers to buildings designed primarily to be spectacular, to attract attention, to become landmarks that define a city's image on the world stage. And Dubai is essentially an entire city built on this principle. The Palm Islands, the World Islands, the Burj Al Arab shaped like a sail, the Museum of the Future with its Arabic calligraphy facade. Every major building is designed to be photographed, to go viral, to attract tourists and investment. This isn't necessarily bad in itself. Beautiful architecture can inspire. It can create civic pride. It can attract economic activity. But here's the hidden cost of starchitecture. These buildings are incredibly difficult to build. They require unusual shapes, extreme heights, challenging materials. And that difficulty translates directly into danger for the workers who construct them. A conventional building follows patterns that construction crews know well. Starchitecture often requires inventing new techniques on the fly, working in conditions that haven't been thoroughly safety tested. And there's another problem. These projects are almost always on tight deadlines. Dubai's rulers wanted results fast. They wanted to transform the city within a generation. That pressure filtered down to every construction site. Faster, bigger, more impressive. The workers bore the cost of that ambition. Compare this to slower, more deliberate development. Cities that grow organically over decades or centuries. Where buildings are designed for function first and aesthetic second. Where labor protections evolve alongside construction techniques. The results might be less Instagram-worthy, but the human cost is dramatically lower. Remember when I mentioned another project that makes Dubai look modest? It's called NEOM, and it's happening right now in Saudi Arabia. NEOM includes something called the Line, a mirrored city stretching 170 kilometers through the desert. 2 parallel skyscrapers, 500 meters tall, running in a straight line. The plans call for 9 million residents. Zero cars. Zero streets. Just this gleaming mirror in the desert. The estimated cost? Over $1 trillion. And it needs to be substantially complete by 2030 for Saudi Arabia's World Expo bid. That timeline is, by most engineering assessments, almost impossible. Which means pressure, extreme pressure, on everyone involved in building it. Reports have already emerged about worker conditions at NEOM. Migrant laborers housed in remote camps. Allegations of passport confiscation. Workers afraid to speak out. The same patterns we saw in Dubai, potentially repeating on an even larger scale. Here's the uncomfortable truth. We haven't learned. The global economy still runs on cheap labor from developing countries building monuments for wealthy ones. The kafala system may be reformed on paper, but the underlying dynamics persist. Men leave their families for years at a time, betting their futures on promises that often aren't kept. So, what do we do with this information? Do we boycott Dubai? Refuse to admire impressive architecture? I don't think it's that simple. What I think we can do is remember. Remember that every gleaming tower was built by human hands. Remember that the workers who build our world deserve dignity and safety and fair compensation. Remember that the true measure of a civilization isn't the height of its buildings, but how it treats its most vulnerable people. The next time you see a photo of Dubai's skyline or any spectacular building project anywhere in the world, take a moment. Wonder about the hands that built it, the lives that shaped it, the stories that will never be told. Because hidden behind every design is a human cost. And it's only by acknowledging that cost that we can hope to do better in the future. I'm going to keep exploring these hidden stories in future videos. If that's something you're interested in, you know what to do. I'll see you in the next one.